All right, so we have this problem, and we need to find the other endpoint given the following. We know one of the endpoints, and we know the midpoint. So what we're going to do first is we're going to label the points. So we know that this point we've got an x and a y, x and a y. And we know that this is our first point, so this will be x1, y1. But this is the midpoint, so we're going to call that the midpoint. Our x midpoint and y midpoint. So now we're going to go back to our midpoint formula, and we're going to say the midpoint is going to be to add up the x coordinates of both of our points divided by 2. But this time, we actually don't know what x2 is. What we know is we know x1 and the midpoint. So we're just going to plug in what we know. So let's start with x1. We know x1. x1 is -2. And we know the midpoint. The midpoint is here. 1. So I'm going to plug that in for the midpoint. So that's going to be 1. And now we're just going to plug in the rest of what we know. We don't know x2, but we know we're going to divide the whole thing by 2. So now we're going to find the other midpoint. So we're going to solve for x2 here. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. That gives these cancel out. 2 times 1 is 2, equals -2 plus x2. Then I'm going to add 2 to both sides. And so my final answer for the x coordinate is going to be 2 plus 2 is 4, equals the x of one of my endpoints. So now let's do this again, and we'll do this with the y's. And so I'm going to say my y midpoint is going to equal one endpoint on the y plus the other divided by 2. And again, we're going to plug in what we know. So what we know is we know one endpoint, so that's going to be my my y1. The other thing we know is the midpoint. So the y coordinate on the midpoint is 3, so I'm going to plug that in. I'm going to plug it in for the y midpoint. So now we're just going to plug in what we know now. Plug in the rest. So we don't know the other midpoint, or the other endpoint, and we're going to divide it by 2. So now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to solve for y2. So let's first start by getting rid of this division. So we're going to multiply both sides by 2. So 2 divided by 2 cancels out, and 2 times 3 gives us 6. And now we've got 7 plus y2. So now we're going to subtract 7 on both sides. So 7 minus 7 cancels out, and we get y2 is at -1. So our other endpoint, our end answer here is going to be our x2, y2 is going to be at 4, -1.